Hello and welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. Today we're going to take a look at creating this type-based poster. It's just, playing around with a bunch of different effects, and, you can see that there's underlying type here. Just kind of a neat little poster effect we're going to create here in Photoshop. Then we're going to learn about some cool tools along the way. So let's get started. We're going to go File, New, and we're going to create a new document, width 1280 by height 720. Hit OK. First thing we're going to do is hit Command or Control I. That's going to invert the white, make it black. And we want to go ahead and open up two texture files. Now, these are from a website called Texturize.com. They're free textures. I'm going to link to them in the description of this video. So if you don't have textures that you like already, you can just grab these textures and follow along using the exact same textures as I'm using. I have them here in the bridge. They're these two guys right here. So I'm going to select them both, and I'm going to drag them right down and drop them in Photoshop. And they're very large files, so they're both going to open up here. And basically what we want to do is we're going to start with the first texture here, and I'm going to copy it over into my new document. So I'm going to go Command or Control A, which is going to select everything, then Command or Control C, which is going to copy. I can close this document now. I'm done with it. Come back to here, and I'm going to paste Command or Control V. I'm going to paste it right in. As you can see, it's much larger than my document right now. So I'm going to zoom out a couple clicks, and I'm going to hit Command or Control T to bring up Free Transform. And holding down the Shift key, I'm going to drag in this bottom right handle. And there we go. We got it nice and centered. I'm going to drag straight up. And right about there. I want to get this big brownish rusty spot right in the center of my document. I'm going to hit the little check icon to commit my changes, and I'll zoom back in. Alright, now that we've done this, we want to allow this texture to kind of interact with the black, although right off the bat it's not really going to interact. What's going to interact is the second texture. So we want to convert this white to black, and we want this texture here in the middle to be what looks texturized. So it sounds complicated, but it's really not. The first thing we want to do, because we want to keep everything kind of black and white, is desaturate this. We want to get rid of the bluishness out here and the oranginess in the center here. So Control Shift or Command Shift U, and that's going to desaturate your document. You can go ahead and open up levels or curves if you want, dump a little bit more contrast in here. All I'm going to do is hit Command or Control I again to invert. It's going to make your whites black, your blacks white. And you can see now it just looks like we have this kind of white spatter mark on top of that black we just created. Alright, and if we look in our layers panel here, we can see it's actually on its own layer. So we're going to call this Texture 1. And drag my layers panel kind of small over here. Alrighty, so we've got our first texture in here. Great. Let's go grab the second one and do sort of the same thing, but first thing we want to do is actually rotate this. We're going to go Image, Image Rotation, and just 90 degrees, either clockwise or counterclockwise. I think I'm going to go with clockwise here. I don't really know why. And I'm going to go ahead and select all just as we did before, Command or Control A, and then Command or Control C to copy it. Command or Control W to close that guy out. No, we don't want to save any of the changes. And then we're going to paste them right into here. So Command or Control V. And again, huge file, so we're going to zoom out. Command or Control T, and we've got our free transform handles. We're going to go ahead and grab this lower handle, suck that thing right in there. Again, we just want to try to center this as best as possible. We don't need to be too perfect about it. There we go. That looks good for me. And I'm going to zoom. Whoop, I'm going to zoom right back in. There we go. Again, we want to go ahead and desaturate this. Control Shift or Command Shift U. And in this case, I want to add a little bit more contrast here. So I'm just going to open up levels. I'm going to do Image Adjustments, Levels. And I'm going to pull the blacks in a bit. I'm going to leave the whites as they are and hit OK. Now that we've done this, we actually want to invert this because we want this kind of painterly looking watercolor splattery stroke thing to be what shows, not this white area out here. So I'm going to hit Command or Control I, and we now have inverted that as well. Now, notice we can't see our texture underneath unless we shut the whole layer off. So what we want to do is change the blend mode of this layer from normal to screen. You can see now our texture here on top is interacting with the texture below. As we move it around, it looks very nice. So I'm actually going to set this sort of here, almost align the right edge of the texture with the right edge of my document. Alright, great. I also want to come up here into my layers panel and just name this Texture 2. I try to spell texture correctly. Texture 2, there we go. Alright, great. What I want to do now is find just a bunch of text. This can just be Lipsum. You can go to lipsum.com and grab a big, huge block of text if you want. I actually have here, I've put together both of the speeches transcribed. I didn't do the transcription, but they were transcribed from both Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush's speeches, respectively, when there were the 2 space shuttle disasters while they were in office. So I'm going to here Command or Control A to select all here just in Notepad, and I'm going to copy this text. And this text can be found online. So it's no big deal to find some text. But now that I've copied my text, and hopefully you've copied yours, we want to grab the type tool, just the regular old horizontal type tool, and there are a couple settings we want to make sure we have set before we get going here. First off, I'm using Arial. You can use whatever font you want. However, there may be some sizing issues because different fonts, are just, they're different sizes. And I'm going to set mine to a style of regular, and 12 points is perfect for right now. And also, I'm using a color of white. You want to make sure you're using white. Now what I'm going to do is drag out from the top left corner and drag all the way to the bottom right corner, because I want my type to basically fit here within my document. So now that I've done that, I'm just going to go ahead and paste my text in. Command or Control V. You can see I've got my text, doesn't quite fill everything, so I'm just going to paste again. And there we go. We have just text covering our entire document. Hit the little check icon. Great. Now that we've done this, we want to go ahead and reduce the fill opacity of this white text. I'm going to reduce the fill opacity to something like 35 or 40%. I'm going to go with 40% here. You can see it just fades it out a little bit. But the advantage of fill opacity is fill opacity reduces the pixels in the reduces the opacity of the pixels in the layer, but does not affect the layer styles. That's important because now we're going to go and apply an outer glow and a drop shadow to this type. But we didn't want that outer glow or drop shadow to, be toned down at all. We still want them to really pop and almost pop around this type. So it's going to be a cool effect here. We're going to go layer, layer style, and we're on that text layer. Layer, layer style. Let's go with our drop shadow first. You can see immediately you see it change. We're going to reduce the opacity of the drop shadow to around 35% and just set the distance and size to something small, either 1 or 2. So I'm going to set my distance to 2 and my size to 2 as well. Nice little drop shadow. You can hardly notice it, but it's definitely there. You can see it popping over the lighter texture areas. And we're also going to apply an outer glow. Now, you can do a number of things. For later on, we're going to be creating these sort of streak effects to go on top of this poster, and those streaking effects are going to be this kind of light buttery yellow. So I'm going to leave my outer glow to that light buttery yellow. Whatever color you're going to be using in the end, just set that to your outer glow color. Now you can always come back later and change this because it's just a layer style. It's a matter of just double clicking the layer and changing the color. So you may just want to stick with the light yellow for now so you know what you're getting. Because it's a light color, I'm going to go into here and I'm just going to set this to color dodge. It's going to kind of give us a cool, almost metallic looking effect. Really neat. And that's all we need to change with the outer glow. Just the blend mode needs to be set to color dodge. And I'm going to hit OK. Great. Now that we've done that, we need to go ahead and duplicate this text layer. Hotkey for duplicating a layer, Command or Control J, beautiful. And you can see that the effect has really become intense here. We definitely don't want our layer styles, here on this second text layer. So I'm simply going to right click on the second text layer. And, well, I'm moving down off screen. Let me see if it's up here in layer. And layer styles, clear layer style. It's going to clear all those layer styles and just leave us with some white text. You can see it's just white text. It even set the fill opacity back to 100%. Great. Now that we've done that, we want to change the color of this type. A quick way to change the color of type, if it's already on there and there's a lot of it and you don't want to highlight it all, just come up here to Window and grab the Character panel. Okay? And you've got this color swatch here. You can come in here and just set it to black. Alright? It's going to set that type to black. You notice we were on that type layer we wanted to edit. So there we go. We've just set all of that type to black. Great. Now that we've done that, this is going to get a little tricky here, but bear with me. We're still on this type layer. We're actually not going to create a new layer for this. All we're going to do is create a selection. So what we want to do is grab the horizontal type mask tool. I don't know how many of you have used this tool. It's kind of a neat tool for creating type selections. And what we want to do is just select somewhere. However, the type tool typically, well, not typically, it tries to edit type that's already been placed. So in order to prevent that from happening, we're going to hold down the Shift key and we're just going to click. Alright, great. And I'm going to up my size to 200 points. And I'm going to change my style to black. Again, color, it's a non-issue here. So what I want to do is just start typing the letters that would spell great speeches. So I'm just going to type great, and then I'm going to hit the enter key to add a line here, and I'm going to type the word speeches. Alright, and now in order to move this around, you don't want to commit your change. As soon as you commit your change, you've got your selection, so you have to be very careful. In order to move this text around, hold down the Control or the Command key, and just click and drag it. Alright, so yes, we've spelled great speeches. Alright, we spelled it correctly. What I also want to do is actually tilt this a little bit. Notice when I'm holding down my Control or Command key that I get this transform box. So just grab one of the top corners and just rotate it. Alright, I'm still holding the Command or Control key. I'm going to pull this right into here. And I'm actually going to highlight this text. And I'm going to pop open the Characters panel. And I want to get rid of all this tracking or kerning here. Set that to 0. Great. And now that we've done that, we're just going to hit the little check icon. And we're going to get a selection. You can see great speeches. Wonderful. Now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and mask this black text layer, this guy, to this shape. We only want the black text that appears inside of this selection to appear. So you can simply hit the mask icon here, or you can just go layer, layer mask, reveal selection. So that's telling Photoshop, hey, hide everything except the stuff that's inside of my selection. So reveal selection. There we go. You can tell something's there at this point, but you really can't tell what it is. You certainly would not be able to read great speeches unless you really took some time and deciphered what it was. So we want to kind of pronounce those words, great speeches. So what we're going to do is create a new layer, and I'm just going to call this overlay. And I'm going to Command or Control click this great speeches mask here. Alright, it's going to load that as a selection again. And here, make sure you've selected the overlay layer. And fill this layer with, let's try black first. And we're going to set, I'm going to hit Command or Control D to deselect. And let's try setting this to something like overlay. Okay, that's pretty intense. Let's see what happens if we invert and set the color of this layer to white. Command or Control I simply swaps that out and sets the color to white. I don't like it as much. The G completely disappears here. And the S, you can't really read it. So I'm going to keep that set to black and maybe just set it to soft light or something that's going to, keep this black out here from getting quite so intense. So I'm going to set this to soft light. That's much better. Maybe even reduce the opacity a few ticks. All right, great. Now that we've done that, we can just Command or Control click this layer. And we're going to create a gradient map adjustment layer that's going to apply some color to this area in kind of a cool way. So we're going to go Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and we're going to choose Gradient Map. And we're going to hit OK. And here we go. We have our gradient map, and we need to choose a gradient. I want to choose a gradient that is basically a dark red going to a light red. So I'm going to select my gradient editor, and I'm going to double click on my first color stop, and I'm going to choose a dark red here, and hit OK. And then I'm going to grab the white, and I'm going to choose a lighter red. Alright, very cool. And you can see we're getting some effects out there. It looks a little odd right now, but don't worry about that. We're going to collapse the adjustments panel. Open up the layers panel. Again, you can see there's our adjustments layer. I'm going to try setting this to something like overlay. Okay, looks pretty cool. Let's see what soft light gives us. I don't like soft light as much. You can't really see the color nearly as much. Vivid light's kind of nice. Hard light, I don't like it as much. At this point, I'm thinking either overlay or vivid light, and I'm going to go with overlay because it's just a touch more subtle on the color end of things. So we're going to set that gradient map to overlay. And at this point, we have two last things to do. We just need to apply a vignette to this document, and then we're going to go ahead and just apply our sort of electric lightning, sort of bolty looking things that are going to be streaking around to this particular image. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and I'm going to name it Vignette. And I just need to fill this layer with white. So I'm going to fill it with my foreground color, which is black right now, but I'm just going to Command or Control I, which is going to invert and give me white. And we're going to go Filter, Distort, Lens Correction. Lens correction is a really great way to, do lens correcting, obviously. Correct vignettes that appear due to certain lenses when you're shooting images, but it's also a great tool for applying vignettes, especially if you want to apply a vignette as an action, because this will automatically set the vignette based on your document, not based on a selection or any of the other various methods there are out there to create vignettes. So I just want to reduce the amount to -100. It's going to be a nice strong dark vignette around the edges. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm just going to set this layer to a blend mode of multiply. It's going to knock out all the whites and just keep the blacks. Okay, and you can see we've got a nice vignette there on the edges. Great, and you can see Great Speeches is really disappearing over there. If I was really going to spend a lot of time working on this, I would get in there and I would brighten that up. Maybe mask off the vignette just a touch for right there through the G and the S. But we're not going to take the time to do that right now. What we are going to do is create a new layer, and we're going to call it Light. And I'm going to grab the brush tool. And with the brush tool, I'm going to load a set of brushes here that I've downloaded. I can't remember what site I downloaded them from, but they are free and they're out there. It's just sort of like this abstract brush. I'm going to choose Replace Brushes, and I'm going to load this brush set here called Abstract Lines. Matter of fact, if you Google Abstract Lines free Photoshop brush, you'll probably find this exact brush set. Double click to load that. Oh, there we go. And here we go, loaded into Photoshop. You can see the brushes are quite large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first one here, and I'm just going to paint with white. If we want to change the color, and we're going to change the color, we're going to do that using the Hue Saturation Adjustment layer. And for no particular reason, you could color your brush now. This is the way I always tend to do my brushing, is in either white or black and then colorize it later. So I'm just going to click once here, maybe click again to intensify that effect a little bit. Great. You know what? Actually, I don't like that brush positioning there. I'm going to move it over here. Cool. And I'm going to grab another brush, maybe this huge one here. And by the way, the reason I zoomed out is because these brushes are so big, I want to be able to see the whole brush so I know what part I'm painting with. I'm going to paint this one right here. And let's grab this guy here. And you know what? I'm actually going to rotate this one. So I'm going to open up the brushes panel here by selecting that little icon. And we've got our little rotation angle device here. So I'm going to angle this about -75-ish. And we can see we're getting this cool flat effect. Flattened effect, I should say. And last but not least, I'm going to grab this brush here. And I'm just going to put one in right there. And then I'm going to curve it around the corner right there. Alright, great. So we've got a whole bunch of junk running all over the place here. I'm going to zoom back in. And what we want to do is colorize this. So we're going to hit Command or Control U. It's going to bring up the Hue Saturation Adjustment layer. And we're going to check Colorize. Now, the first thing you want to do when you're working with a white is you need to immediately darken it. And the same goes for black. If you're working with black, you need to brighten it so you can actually see the color. So we're going to darken this up. And we're going to jack up the saturation just so we can get a color. Okay, we can see right now we've got a red. I want more of a yellow. Remember that outer glow we set? We had more of a yellow. So I'm going to go with kind of a light orange, and I'm actually going to brighten it up, and I'm going to reduce saturation a bit. Brighten it up, increase saturation, shift it more toward yellow, but not quite to green. All right, maybe right about there is good. We're going to hit OK. And what I want to do at this point is go ahead and duplicate this layer. I actually should have duplicated the layer before I colorized it, because what we need to do now with this layer is hit Command or Control U, just shove brightness all the way up to convert this back to white, and just shut that top layer off. We're going to work with the bottom layer here. We want to blur this and then set it to overlay. So we're going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and a blur of somewhere between 2 and 4 pixels usually works great. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to set this to overlay. You're going to see a lot of the dark stuff is going to disappear, and we're going to see the remains of a little bit of yellowish over the lighter areas of the image. Great. So now with this guy here, the white, I actually want to duplicate this one more time. Command or Control J and shut that top layer off. Select the light layer here and hit Command or Control F. Command or Control F is going to apply the last used filter, which was that 4 pixel Gaussian blur. So Command or Control F, or you can select it up there like I just did. And we've got this blurred white layer. I'm going to set this to overlay as well. This is going to kind of bring out those yellows a little bit more. And then I'm going to select the top sharp layer, which is not blurred, it's just the lines. And I'm going to set that to overlay as well. You could try overlay or soft light, whatever works better for you. And we have this really, kind of crazy electric looking effect going on in the background. Now, if you want to intensify the yellow, it's very easy. Simply select the colored layer and just duplicate it. Command or Control J. And you can see we're immediately getting a more intense yellowish effect. You can really tell that there's type back there. So that's it for this one. That is how I've created this sort of electric looking type based poster I hope you learned something. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking around. Please go check out the site. That's www.tutbid.com. Thanks for watching.